A change that has not really been discussed this league are the buffs to the Horn Scarab of Awakening. For anyone that doesn't know, multiple mechanics got buffed with this Scarab to give them more reason to be picked over Harvest, I guess. Now realistically, there's no mechanic that can get buffed enough that would dethrone Harvest as the main use case for this Scarab. But, as you can see right here, Ritual had by far the biggest buff and is now, in my opinion, one of the coolest uses for this Scarab. It went from 150% increased chance for special rituals to 500%. That is 6 times the odds of finding special rituals while using this craft as opposed to without. That is a massive buff. And the last league I actually tested this Scarab when it was at 150%, and it sucked. I lost so much money and I didn't even notice the difference between using it and not using it, to the point where I even said in this video that I think it is bugged. And I also made another video later on in that league where I burned 1000 maps in a single day hunting for the nameless ritual altar, and in those 1000 maps I found it 21 times, which brings me to the conclusion that it's around a 2% chance to find the nameless ritual altar. And for anyone that doesn't know, that is the altar that has the audience with the King Boss fragment, which is worth over a divine. If you run it with 2 Ritual Scarab of selectivenesses, that's 6 fragments from a single encounter, which is like 7.5 divines. But at a 2% rate for the Nameless Altar, that means that with the newly buffed Awakened Ritual Craft, at a 500% increase for special rituals, the Nameless Ritual Altar should have a 10 to 12% rate of spawning. This means every 8 to 10 or so maps you should essentially, at current prices, be finding 7.5 divines worth of fragments consistently. And then hopefully the other special rituals would take you much, much higher, to the point where this actually becomes extremely lucrative. So I spent 20,000 chaos and ran 100 of these awakened ritual maps to see if it's as good as it is on paper. I'll be going through all of the loot made and my conclusion on the Scarab, and then I'll do a quick pass on how I ran ritual in the first place in case you want to run it yourself with or without the Scarab. If you're not subscribed, consider doing it, as I always share what I find, and as you can see here, the strat did work almost as good as I expected. All of these audience with the kings and everything else here was farmed in 100 maps, which is absolutely insane. 66 fragments from 100 maps, 150 divines on Wealthy XL2, I believe, but that doesn't mean that it's worth it, especially when using a Scarab that is priced around the pinnacle of harvest juicing, which is one of the best moneymakers in the game. So here's the docs I made. I've got the loot from the 100 maps here, and then I wrote down every single ritual altar that I found in my 100 maps here, and I'll talk about this first. I've color coded it: red for nameless altars, yellow for special altars, and uncolored for regular altars, and then I've got the loot that I got from those encounters right next to it. In the end, I got 10 nameless altars and 18 of the other special altars, bringing it to around a 28% special altar odds. I do think I undershot a little bit on my odds. You can see that I started off extremely hot, getting 3 nameless rituals in like 17 maps, and then I got a crazy dry streak here. I got again a crazy cluster of nameless rituals, into another dry streak, into another good cluster, into another dry streak. It is weird how my RNG played out, but I'm kind of glad that it happened, because it feels like sort of every scenario of running the Scarab happened to me in this batch of 100. Crazy special altar strings, crazy nameless altar strings, and then crazy dry streak. So I feel like I've got a pretty good read on this strategy and can give you guys a solid opinion on it. So I spent 18,000 chaos on the Horn Scarab of Awakening, and the chaos I made it from special altars only, since those are the altars that the Scarab affects, was 19,273 chaos, which means I actually made profit. However, if I didn't run the Scarab, I should still expect some special altars, so I need to take away that to find the true value of the Scarab. So around 16.6% of the special ritual altars found would have been found even without the Scarab, so that's minus 3200 chaos, which brings me to 16,000 chaos, which is a 2000 chaos loss on that Scarab. However, even though using that Scarab lost me money, there is one thing that needs to be considered, and that is that using that Scarab improves your odds for certain jackpot items. For example, in my third map, I did hit a 1.5 divination card, 4 of them, so that was 6 divines, and that isn't even that crazy of a jackpot. With how often you're hitting these special altars. That raises your odds at hitting some insanely expensive divination cards or even uniques, which means even if you're running this Scarab at a loss, you still have to consider the hidden value of it raising your odds for those massive jackpot hits. On the flip side, it lowers your odds for omens and good synth bases since those cannot be found in the special altars, so it's sort of a give and take scenario. If you want to hunt for jackpot uniques, div cards and corpses, Horned Scarab of Awakening accomplishes that. If you want the jackpot synthesis bases, then the Horned Scarab of Awakening actually does you a disservice. So in the end, to sum it up, I think the Awakened Ritual Craft is actually very, very good. 66 fragments in 100 maps is crazy, and being able to sort of target farm the ritual divination and unique jackpots make it feel like you're actually running Awakened Ritual. However, no matter how good this feels, I don't actually think it's worth doing because the Horned Scarab of Awakening is priced entirely around the most valuable craft, which is Harvest. Hell, I think as I'm filming this, the Horned Scarab is climbing up by like 30 chaos because Harvest is being pushed to its limit right now. I truly think the Scarab will always be a nightmare to balance, which is a shame because it is by far the coolest Scarab in the game, in my opinion. Personally, I think Awakened Harvest can do with a nerf, and slash or the Scarab drop rates can do with a buff, or even separate some of the crafts into their own Scarabs, because right now 90% of the Scarab is a waste. To have such a cool strategy like Awakened Ritual that can create as many fragments as it did not be worth it because of the way the Horned Scarab of Awakening is designed, it's a complete shame. And to have the Horned Scarab of Awakening essentially be just the fourth Harvest Scarab in the game is also a complete shame. And that's my thoughts on the newly buffed Awakened Ritual Craft. To sum it up, it is extremely good, but sadly probably not worth it because of the way the Horned Scarab of Awakening is designed, which will always make it priced around the most lucrative strat, which is Harvest and not Ritual. The rest of the video is going to be me going over the loot from the entire strat now, and not just talking about the Awakening Scarab in a bubble, because in the end these 100 maps were actually pretty profitable for me, and Ritual is in a pretty good state in my opinion. These were the Scarabs I used for the strat. I would recommend the Ritual Scarab of Wisps over the Horned Scarab of Awakening if you want to run Ritual but don't want to do the Awakened one after watching this video. The selectiveness will, like I said earlier, give you more rerolls, so when you hit the Nameless Ritual altar you get 6 fragments instead of 4. Abundant Scarabs will fill the page to the brim, so you have more odds at hitting something good, although when you hit a Nameless Ritual altar, just know the fragments are guaranteed at 1 per reroll, so Abundance won't increase the amount of fragments you get, the only thing that will is the selectiveness and your Atlas tree. But Abundance is great for getting more of everything else. And now the important thing, how did I run these maps and how did I get the tribute to buy all of the 66 fragments that I got? I utilised a couple of things. At number 1, City Square. You want to always run a ritual on City Square. Alt is fine. I used to be a ritual Glacier Truther, but I've seen the City Square light, right? 3 bosses not separated from the rest of the map, all in one area. That means that if a ritual altar doesn't spawn on top of the boss, you can just lead them towards one and kill them in there for a guaranteed 10,000 tribute every single map and above. Walk up to the bosses, walk towards the nearest ritual altar, and then kill them on top. It is that simple. However, sometimes you still need more tribute. If you find a nameless ritual altar, it will take something like 30,000 plus tribute in total to buy all 6 of the fragments. Running the Wisp Scarab would help with this, but I wasn't able to slot that into my setup, so what I would do is spec into Immutable Dogma. I would run just one city square with the Wisp Scarab and nothing else, and that would net me around 15 to 20,000 tribute, and then I'd buy as many of the fragments as I could, which was usually 4 of them. I'd unspec the node, and then I'd start running my juiced ritual again. And that brings me to the tree. It's a very generic ritual tree since this video is mainly for the data on the awakened ritual and less a ritual guide, but I'll go through it real quick. I didn't opt for delirium because I didn't feel like it was necessary. We take ritual on the tree. I never take this node because I don't like the unnecessary risk it adds. I'd rather some consistency, but we do take the nodes next to it, the 2 additional rerolls and the reduced tribute. We take this node down here just for the more monsters. We take this node up here, and this is probably the most important node because it enables the whole city square strat. of getting the bulk of your tribute from the unique mobs. And then we take the 4 ritual altars up here. Outside of that, you take Rogue Exiles for some more uniques that you can hopefully get into your rituals. And as always, this cluster at the top of the tree for the Reverence Fragment, which in my opinion is now mandatory for every single strategy in the game. Everything after this is sort of whatever, personal preference. I added Eater of World Altars, I added Shrines, I blocked off some random mechanics at the bottom, and got some Scarab chance all the way up here and some Quant 2, just in general to get a little bit more loot out of my maps, even if I was just alching them. I'll link the tree in the description if there are any mistakes on this one. The revised version will be in the description as always. And if you want to run this without the Horn Scarab of Awakening, which should be most of you, you won't have a 100% ritual chance, but I will put a 100% ritual chance tree in the description below. And finally, the overall loot I made from these 100 maps, it was actually quite profitable at something like 0.75 divine profit per map, which, considering we're investing like a divine per map and I was investing into a Scarab that was a loss, is pretty decent for something like a ritual. We did get decently lucky with the Omen of Fortune, but when you're running a large amount of ritual, you should expect some sort of jackpot item. 4 evidences too, which is almost 2000 chaos, which is why that cluster at the top of the tree is absolutely mandatory. A mayor drop, which is cool, a nice little plus of running ritual this league, since that's a new div card to City Square, which is quite nice. I didn't get any crazy valuable corpses, so it's all bunched down here in the misc category, but in the end, it was around 37,000 chaos made in 100 maps, which minus the investment was around 16,000 chaos profit. Not bad at all. Again, if the Awakened Scarab wasn't priced around Harvest, then this ritual craft would be absolutely bonkers. So it's something to keep an eye on in the future, because if that Harvest craft does get nerfed, or if they improve the drop rate for the Scarab or anything else like that, then this strat will automatically shoot all the way up to the top and it will automatically become the way to run a ritual. And that's the video. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. This was something I knew I wanted to test since I read the patch notes before the league, and I hope you appreciate me sharing the results. If you're not already, consider subscribing, and I hope everybody has a good weekend.